Hey guys, how you doing? My name is John. Welcome to my Gamester81 channel. And today we're going to take a closer look at a system that was only available through mail order, and is only available through mail order through a certain club that you had to be a part of. And it was very short-lived, and if you add those three together, it makes it very rare today. And it's called the Columbia Home Arcade system. More or less, this is an Atari 2600 clone. Let's take a closer look at the system itself. Let's look at the controllers. I'll show you some gameplay, explain to you why the system is rare today, and I hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for watching. Before I show you the Columbia Home Arcade, I briefly want to talk about how it came into being. And in order to do that, I want to show you, we're going to start here. This is the ColecoVision Module 1 expansion. This actually, what it does, it plugs into the ColecoVision. If you guys don't know what a ColecoVision is, I did a review on that system in a previous video. You guys can welcome to check that out. And Coleco and Atari during the 80s, early 80s especially, were huge rivals. And imagine it like today. Let's put it in perspective for today. Imagine Sony releasing something that you could download and play any Microsoft Xbox 360 game on the PS3. And not only that, they actually say, let's say Sony made their own Kinect, and you could play any Microsoft exclusive Kinect game on that. Now, would Microsoft be upset? Yes. And Atari was very upset when this was released. In fact, they took Coleco to court. And you think that Atari would win, but apparently Coleco had better lawyers. And what their argument was that they had off-the-shelf parts, meaning none of the parts were used, the same parts were used in making this than they were made to make an Atari 2600. So Atari lost that suit, and Coleco at the time was like, sweet, let's not only make this, but we're going to make our own separate system. And that leads us into the Gemini. So here it is. This is the Gemini video game system released by Coleco in 1983. In the top left corner here, we have a consumer warning saying, please read the instruction manual. I don't never hardly read any instruction manuals, to be quite honest with you, but that's all good. Here is where the game cartridges would actually plug into. This is your controller ports. It's a 9-pin controller adapter. This does work. It is compatible with any Atari 2600 controller. It's compatible with a Sega Genesis controller or Mega Drive controller as well. You can actually play with that. This is your difficulty switches, A, B, difficulty. This is your left controller port. Just like the Atari 2600, you have your different switches here. Reset, game select, black and white, on, off. And on the back, this is where your power adapter would plug into. This is your antenna. This is where you plug into your TV, your RF. And this is your channel select right here. Okay, channel 2, channel 3. And on the bottom, here's a Coleco logo. And in case you guys didn't know, Coleco actually has been around for a while, since the beginning of the century. And they actually started making leather, so it stands for Connecticut Leather Company. They made toys, like they were very famous for the Cabbage Patch Kid toy line, all that good stuff. So they obviously got into the gaming here, which we have. This is serial number 2281. This means this is the 2200th plus system that they made in the line. So it's a pretty early serial number. I'm not sure how many of these were sold. Overall, it's a pretty cool system. I'll tell you one of the advantages of having a Gemini over Atari 2600 is, and here is the controller. This is a very cool design controller. Actually, I prefer this over the joystick that you get with the Atari 2600. You get this 8-way directional stick right here. This is your fire button, your action button, just one. And this is a knob here. It actually spins 270 degrees. And this is used for Pong, all that good stuff, okay? So pretty cool. And right here you have the local Gemini video game system logo, and it's also in French as well. Okay, so this is probably a Canadian model at one point. Now, why am I showing you the Gemini? Now, I know you saw the title. It says Columbia Home Arcade. Well, basically, in 1983, Coleco negotiated with Columbia House at the time. Columbia House was starting a video game club through the Columbia House network, and they basically worked with Coleco to come up with their own system. And that leads us to the Columbia Home Arcade. And here is the Columbia Home Arcade. Oh, what game do I have in here? Beat 'em and eat 'em? Oh, I don't know what that's doing there. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, Columbia Home Arcade. And this is basically the same thing as a Gemini. Let's compare the two. Basically identical in size, same mold, everything else. You got a different logo here. This is Columbia Home Arcade. And why is this so rare? What makes this system more rare than the Gemini, for example? Well, Columbia House, as most of you guys are aware, were huge into music, even now DVDs, all that good stuff. But in the early 80s, they had a video game club. So you could actually, very simply, you could actually purchase games through mail order, and they'd mail you games every month or week, whatever. and they worked with Gemini, and this system was only available through that club. You can only get this on through mail away, and it was only available for a limited time. So because it was only available for a limited time, short window, and it was only available through the Columbia House, you had to be a member to get this. It is considered quite rare. Shows up maybe on eBay once a year, if that. So it's pretty cool. Same thing as before. And this is your reset. This is your game select. Black and white on and off as before. Cartridge plug in like that. And here on the bottom, it says Columbia Home Arcade. And this is the serial number is actually 1066. So it's even lower serial number. Pretty neat. I'm not sure how many of these were actually made. And as you can see here, it says Coleco. It's just missing the logo as the other one showed here. Here's a controller, and unlike the Gemini, it's essentially the same as the Gemini, but with this one, it actually says Columbia Home Arcade. It's actually engraved in that. It's kind of, you can see that, where this is more of like a metal stick-on thing, which is neat, but essentially it's the same thing. And yes, the Columbia Home Arcade will use the regular Atari joysticks, and it will use the Genesis joysticks as well. I also got this with it, and what this does is you plug it in, and so if you're playing a game like Pong, actually you need this into one first controller port, and it'll expand it off, and that's pretty cool. Those are actually pretty hard to find. It came with a Gemini power supply. This is not the original Columbia Home Arcade power supply, but this will work on the Columbia Home Arcade. This is the Gemini power supply. And also it came with this thing right here. This is actually pretty hard to find as well. This is the Columbia Home Arcade game connection. This is connected so you can hook it up to your RF. It's an adapter. And this is your TV switch, your TV to game switch. All that good stuff. Pretty sweet. I'm going to show you a game as an example, kind of show you the graphics of what the system could do. Those who know me best know that Donkey Kong Arcade is one of my favorite games of all time, so I felt it fitting to do a review and show you some gameplay over the Atari 2600 version, or in this case, the Columbia Home Arcade. Nintendo had gave Coleco the exclusive right to port Donkey Kong to various consoles. It was initially released on the ColecoVision in July of 1982, and it was a very true port, surprisingly for the time. And only 6 months later, Coleco decided to port Donkey Kong to both the Intellivision and the Atari 2600, which is the version I'm showing you here. Notice that Coleco did not port it to the Atari 5200 because that was the comparable graphic system and closest graphically to the ColecoVision at the time. Coleco also ported Donkey Kong on their tabletop series with an agreement from Nintendo. I did a review on that particular toy on my Nostalgiaholic channel. In an agreement made by Nintendo and Coleco, Nintendo was able to get $1 for every tabletop game sold and $1.40 for every cartridge sold for Donkey Kong. Man, Atari was very upset that Coleco had made an agreement with Nintendo, and they're so upset at Nintendo that when Nintendo was looking to port the Nintendo Entertainment System to the States, they actually wanted to work with Atari for distribution help. But Atari refused and said, screw you, Nintendo. They backed out and they're very bitter, and look at where Atari is now and look at where Nintendo is. It would have been a totally different thing if Atari would have helped Nintendo with the NES. Due to the limitations of the Atari 2600, the graphics are significantly different than the arcade. These fireballs can only stay in one place, and they only had 2 stages, not 4 stages that they have in the arcade. They had this one right here, and they had the rivet stage, which I just showed you. In truth, there are a lot of great games for the Atari 2600 library, but there are also a lot of bad games for the system as well. But all considering, the system came out in 1977, and actually was supported up until 1992, and there's still a lot of homebrews available for the 2600. I hope you guys learned a few things in this video. Thanks for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and we'll see you soon. Take care.